Everybody has a cell phone now. It's just, I guess, part of part of our society. Everyone is expected to have a phone, and we all do. And it stays right on your, right on your hip, or on your pocket. It stays in your coat. It stays in your purse. It's always with you. And I think what people don't appreciate is that it's like a little computer, and it tracks every single thing about your life, and it stores it potentially for a very, very long time. And so those cell phones can either really, really help or hurt a case, whether it's criminal defense practice and you're working with a criminal defendant who may have some concerns about, what might be on the phone, or might say, hey, I have exculpatory evidence or things that, exonerate me here on my phone, right? So there's kind of that piece. But then also if you're injured, if you're in a crash, you may have, posts or text about what happened. Those are all pieces of information that we either have on our phone, or that can go out right to the public in a format that could get stored on a phone. But all those things are part of the story and can either help or really hurt. And so if I think about it from a criminal defense perspective, oftentimes what we see is that phones get collected as part of evidence in a case, and the police might get a search warrant to go and try to enter the phone and take an image, a forensic copy of the phone, to see what's in there. And they might have a limited scope of what they can look at, or maybe it's kind of everything in the phone. Okay. And so I think number one, just being mindful of that and knowing kind of what you have on a phone and not, is important to just at least be aware. Everything that you are doing on your phone is potentially evidence in a case. It's hard to think about that all the time because it's just something that we're all used to using, but technically that can be an issue in a criminal case. In an injury case, I think about things like, what gets said, what gets retained, what sort of like what's your location, your speed, kind of where, kind of are there photos or are there things that are being said about kind of what happened with an incident, like you're rear-ended, for example. What did you text about that? What did you post about that? Kind of all of those pieces of information in theory can be in the phone. They could have been posted, you know what I mean? And then it's through your apps or whatever. But all of that, again, becomes part of the story and potentially evidence and exhibits in a case. And so, I mean, again, I think it's important to know that that is a possibility. And that we need to be very careful then about kind of what gets shared, what gets put on the phone, and controlling kind of what, to the extent you can, kind of the story we want to tell in the future. And so if you're in an accident, I would always advise, do not post things on social media. Don't talk about the accident with anybody but your lawyer. I know that's very hard to do, but try to kind of control the flow of the communication, because technically all of that's stored right on your phone. And then, potentially put out there if you're posting and whatnot. So those are kind of the areas that I'm thinking about in terms of kind of how your phone gets maybe looped into a case and not. There's other ways, I'm sure, as well, but those are kind of the two that come to mind as potentially either really helpful or really damaging, depending on the case and the situation. For example, if an app is tracking speed, right, and the speed says that you're going, 15 miles an hour over, right, and you T-bone another vehicle, in theory, that's not a good piece of evidence in your favor, right? But it's all out there and potentially discoverable. An attorney would have to go and try to get that, but that is the kind of information that can be on a phone, that would be potentially coming into kind of the scope of a case, if people want to dig into that information.